welcome back to the Sweet Tea series. I am at the RNC convention right now, the Republican or RPT convention. Wrong thing already. It's been a busy day, but I'm here with Senator Paxton. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks.
We are going to be spilling some sweet tea, so I have some fun, exciting stuff happening in my life. I am about 4 months pregnant right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And we just found out that it's a girl, so I'm so excited.
All right. That's amazing. Well, I have 4 grown kids now, and a son and 3 daughters, and it's amazing. Daughters and sons are different. Of course, the daughters are all different too, right? Everybody's their own person and everything, but it really is great as now a grandmother to have daughters, right? Because it's, I don't know, there's just something special about the bond, and I love being able to help them with their children, and it's awesome. You're gonna love it.
I'm so excited, and this is also the first grandbaby for my parents, and first great grandbaby from that side of the family. So everyone's excited to have a new little baby around. I'm trying to see if I can get my parents to come out to be a little bit closer to me. They're in the Rio Grande Valley, but we'll see. They're probably watching this, so please, you guys should move to Bastrop or something. It's close by.
That would be awesome. I was the first grandchild on one side.
Okay.
And it's an awesome thing. So congratulations to your little daughter. She's going to love being the first grandchild.
Well, I'm so excited. And a lot of the work that you've been doing, especially last session, was very focused on children, especially what comes to mind first is the App Store accountability bill.
Right.
So will you go over what that was and what we're maybe looking for in the future in Texas in terms of online safety for kids? Because that's such a big issue. I can't even imagine parents who didn't grow up with that kind of technology now trying to figure out how to navigate that with their own kids and with all that influence. So what's happening?
Well, you know what, you bring up a really good point. It's incredibly challenging, I think, for parents to navigate this with their children, because most of the parents were not parented through these kinds of things. Right? The technology is fairly new in the big scheme of things, but it changes so fast, right? So I used to be a school counselor and a high school math teacher. And as a counselor, though, I worked with parents a lot. And I remember when Facebook kind of came in, and the kids were using it, but the parents were using it too, right? But even Facebook, if I look back at the Facebook of today and the Facebook of that time, has changed immensely. The like feature completely revolutionized the algorithms and the addictive nature of social media. So, with that said, in the last session, prior to our most recent, actually maybe 2 sessions back, we passed as a Texas legislature House Bill 1181, which I carried in the Senate, which was basically age verification for online porn sites. Okay, very common sense, right? Because we do this in the real world all the time. We age gate substances like alcohol and materials like adult material.
Or even movies. So if you want to get into a rated R movie, you have to be 17. But if you're an 11-year-old kid, you might stumble onto something online.
That's right. So parents' ability to really navigate things and watch out for their kids the way they want to has really been curtailed in the online space. So that was kind of the first step, was the age verification for online porn sites. That bill was immediately challenged by a conglomeration of online porn sites that called themselves the Free Speech Coalition. I'm like, I was not that aware that speech was a real big part of what they do. But anyway, we went all the way to the Supreme Court with it, and we prevailed. So that brought us then to the last session and the App Store Accountability Act. So, what we did with the App Store Accountability Act was it required that for a kid, a minor, to download an app on their device, that it had the app had to do age verification to determine if they were an adult or a minor. If they were a minor, it had to require parental consent. Again, a very, very common sense approach to the way we do most things, and have for a long time. It has been challenged. It was challenged immediately by some technology companies again, but I was just very happy. We appealed it. And actually, there was an injunction put against it right before the beginning of January when it was to go into effect. But just recently, the Fifth Circuit, where the case had been appealed to, actually they have said, no, we are going to stay that because the harm that may be happening is not worth the risk. That's also a good sign for the destination of the bill as well. So
Okay.
I think it's in good shape, but it also requires that that parents are provided with content ratings.
Right.
And these are things that the apps, they do this already, but it wasn't required to go through the parent before. So I think it's a great step forward for parental rights and for child safety.
Yeah. Well, again, as a almost like soon to be welcoming a baby into the family mom, and seeing how many parents even just hand their kids iPads, I'm really glad that there's going to be some kind of more control that parents have over what their kids are able to see.
I do too. And one of the great things is when we pass something in Texas, we build it to survive the courts.
Right.
And so when we do, then it gives cover for other states to move that very same legislation through and know that it's going to be covered on a constitutional perspective. So when we do this, it not only helps Texas kids, but it helps kids all across the country. There is also a federal version of the App Store Accountability Act currently before Congress. Mike Lee from Utah is carrying that bill.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's important to have, all of the gaps kind of covered. I think what matters to me in any federal legislation is that the Texas legislation doesn't get watered down by the federal legislation. So that's one of the things I'm watching closely and really encouraging Mike Lee as he goes through the process. But I think it'll be a great step forward for families in general and for our future, because our children, when they lose their innocence, when they lose their childhood, it's never the same.
Right.
And that doesn't mean people can't recover and heal, but it's not the same as it was meant to be.
Right. And I wanted to talk to you about, as a senator, how important is it for moms to be involved and engaged in the political process? Because a lot of the women who view the show they're moms with younger kids right now, and a lot of the bills that we pass, it seems like there's a lot of parents who are part of those coalitions. So
Absolutely.
can you tell me what part parents in general play in our political process right now?
Well, our system in Texas and the federal system, in Texas, though, specifically, we are a citizen legislature. And so, we do this, I wouldn't call it part-time, but we're only in session for 140 days every other year in the odd years. So right now we're in the interim. We're studying legislation so we can hit the ground running when we go back in January. But we are filing legislation that is responsive to our constituents for the most part. I also carried the bill to keep sexually explicit material out of our school libraries. And, when we pass a bill, we continuously monitor it going forward and look at where we need to improve it or change it to adapt to new situations or whatever.
Right.
But I will tell you that bill specifically I carried because of moms that came and talked to me in my district up in Collin County. So it's very important for mothers to pay attention to what's going on with their kids, because now I'm a grandmother, right? I don't have little children in school, but in any segment of our society, any given person sees things that they're like, this is not good, right? This is not healthy. This is not helpful. This is harmful. And so really, I think our legislative process really depends on, if you see something, say something, like they say at the airport.
Right.
Right? But when you do see something, you can go to your House member or your senator. You can share that with them and with their staff. And you never know, when I started working on the sexually explicit material in school libraries bill, you never, those mothers didn't know that other mothers were talking to me. But because they independently came and talked to me, I realized this is not just something that's happening over here. And as I started studying it, of course, I discovered it was happening all over our state, right? But it was also happening right under all of our noses. COVID, I think, opened a lot of people's eyes to what was happening.
It was a window into the classroom that parents didn't have before.
Right. And so I think that overall was a very good development. Parents are so busy, and I think there's a strong temptation, that's kind of supported by convenience and high trust that we usually have with institutions that care for our kids to kind of outsource things. But we do know that when there isn't good transparency, there usually isn't very good accountability. So when parents have good transparency and demand that, then the whole system works better and kids are better protected.
And part of the reason I wanted to bring up parents and women getting involved in the political process, recently you were at the Young Women's Leadership Summit hosted by TPUSA, but you informed me it's been renamed the Women's Leadership Summit.
Yes.
And just the generational thing where you see with moms and their daughters there. Will you tell us a little bit about how that went? And I guess how, do you have hope, I guess, in the younger generations to getting involved in the process?
You know what? This year was my third time and third year in a row to speak at the Women's Leadership Summit. They have just adjusted the name. It was the Young Women's Leadership Summit before. It was in San Antonio 2 years ago, the Gaylord in Dallas last year.
And that's when I attended. And then this year you said again in San Antonio.
Yes, and you were there, I think for my talk as well. And
Yes.
then this year it was back in San Antonio. But I know that just when I was there, because people that knew me or knew of me or whatever after my talk, they came and visited with me, and there were people that I knew that saw my name on the speakers list and they reached out to me. But I had former students and their moms that were there.
Oh, that's so nice.
And so even at the last one in San Antonio last weekend, there was a mom my age and her daughter who now works for TPUSA, and her little girl that's only 5 months old. And
so
sweet. I had seen that previously, just the intergenerational attendance in families. But I talked to women that they were there on a girl trip, all different ages. There were sisters that were there together, and I was very encouraged though. Like the average age at a lot of conservative political events is closer to my end of the spectrum, right? And it's really exciting and energizing to see, that the average age at this event it's young women like you, young women like my daughters. And I think that's wonderful. So they know that they're being supported. They're not alone.
Right.
The other thing I love, of course, about TPUSA is not only do they have a very deep values focus, but it's very spiritually oriented, and I think even more so. I've watched that over the years with TPUSA, and I think that is another really important, element of cohesiveness. It brings people together on a very deep level, and on an eternal level, right? Because I think I'm a state senator, so I pass legislation for a living, right? But I will tell you, Ariana, I don't think government is the answer to the issues in our country. And government has an important role to play that only government can play, and I'm there for that. That's why I'm there. But I believe that the answer that we're looking for is found in Christ, and it will be enacted in our families.
And I love the fact that you're bringing that up, because I think that the first society that people always forget about is the family. That's where lessons are supposed to start. And I noticed, so I went to UT, which I found really fun because I love debating and arguing with people. But it was really funny how many people relied on the government to tell them what is or isn't moral. So whenever we'd have events that were pro-life events and we were speaking to students, a lot of the defense was, and at the time, this was before Dobbs, so a lot of the defense was, well, it's legal. And you just realize, like, without having a church or a real institution to guide people, people rely on the government to be their moral guide.
You know what? That's such an interesting observation, and it reminds me of a conversation I had with, a Gen Z person just a few years ago, and we were talking about values. We were talking, I thought, about right and wrong, and I realized as we got deeper in the conversation that I was thinking in terms of right and wrong.
Right.
But they were not. They were thinking in terms of legal, illegal. And I thought, wow, I mean, if we have a generation that thinks that that's what guides behavior, if it's legal, it's okay, if it's illegal, I mean, you know how changeable that is.
Right.
Right? And of course, I don't think that's the reality either. In real life and in the real world and in real relationships with other people, most of us know when something has happened to us that's wrong.
That's wrong, yeah.
Right? And most of us know, even though we may excuse it and rationalize it, when we've done something that's wrong. There is something inside of us that was put in there by our Creator. And we have a conscience until we beat it down into submission. And, I used to talk with kids when I was a school counselor about, when we do the wrong thing, we really only have two choices. We are either going to repent, which is the biblical word for changing, right? Making amends and repairing what went wrong, or we're going to rationalize. And there are so many people around us that are ready to help us rationalize. Our culture helps us rationalize. Well, they did it first, or it's not that bad, or I've seen other people do things way worse than that. But the more you tell yourself that story, the more callous you become in your conscience. And I heard someone, a preacher, give an illustration one time, and he was talking about a little girl in a Sunday school class, and she was asked by her teacher, "What is a lie?" And the little girl said, "A lie is an abomination to God and a very present help in time of trouble."
Can I be as eloquent as that girl? Oh my goodness.
I know, right? But the issue is, if I think most people, we know it's wrong to lie,
right?
But at the same time, we're kind of prepared to do it if necessary. And I think that's what Christ comes to rescue us from living in a false sense of reality where we can be free to choose what is good. That's what God wants for us, right?
Right.
And it's for freedom that Christ has set us free.
And connecting it back to the government, I am glad that you're talking about what the purpose of government really is. And it shouldn't be the laws to show you what's right and wrong, but to give people the freedom to choose the right thing for their families.
That's right.
So we're going to have to wrap up here pretty soon. But just to leave people on a hopeful note, looking into next session, what are some of the things that people can expect us to be fighting for, especially as it pertains to either child safety or even family legislation?
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the things we will continue to do, we'll continue to follow the trajectory of the App Store Accountability Act,
yes, as
it no doubt may go all the way to the Supreme Court, and make sure that we do what we need to do. There is going to be a lot of legislation, I think, around AI as it continues to develop so rapidly. I think specifically around chatbots. That's one of the things that,
and kids having access to chatbots that have some inappropriate content in them.
Well, there's inappropriate content. There's serious history of invasion of data privacy in that space. But, the other thing is, these are, especially when you look at companions, right? There's an emotional aspect to those that's very, very attractive to a person, whether they're a kid or an adult, that's lonely or struggling, doesn't know who to talk to. I think that you're going to see more and more legislation around those features of mimicking and impersonating a real person. I think you're going to see things that require disclaimers that say this is not a real person, this is not a licensed professional. But the other thing we know is that children, even when you tell them that they don't process it the way adults do. And so we have to have the highest standards when it comes to child safety, and I think you'll see a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for everything moving forward into next session. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you for having me. Let's do it again sometime.
Yes, please. And we're going to get into so much more faith, family, freedom. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Senator Paxton, for being here.
Thanks,
Everyone
Ariana.
else, I will see you next time.